G'day there, listeners. James here, and today I have an absolutely incredible interview. I found this one of the most inspirational and interesting interviews I've ever done. And I'm talking with Ina Alex and Richard Gould from Tui Balms. Now, Tui, chances are, if you're in Australia or New Zealand as a massage therapist, you might have used or at least heard of Tui Balms. It's a balm that has been around for over 40 years, but that's actually not the most interesting thing that Ina and Richard were sharing with me. TUI, I'm not sure if you're aware, but TUI is like a cooperative workers co-op that actually is a grassroots intentional community that live together on 100 acres in New Zealand, quite remote. And they actually live and then work together as well, creating the Tui Balms as well as a whole bunch of other products and things that they do there. So their story is really inspirational. And what I can see is that they're really living out those values of that intentional community through their actual product and the way that they support the massage industry, as well as a bunch of other things that they're doing there. So listen into this interview, pay attention to what they're doing, because it's absolutely fantastic to see a business that has been able to quite long term live so well aligned to their values and their intentional vision. Hey, it is fantastic to have both of you on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to the discussion with you guys, Ina and Richard. Tui Balms has a really unique business model and community that's built around it. And I think, as well as diving into what the balms are and how that works, I'm really excited to hear a bit more about the community that you've built and how that works. So I'd love to just maybe have you guys start off this conversation by introducing who you are and what the business is, how Tui Balms works, and some of the really unique stuff that you're doing there.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks, James, for having us here. And we're really happy to share everything we know about Tui Balms and our passion for the massage industry and the products that we make and our business model too. And really, to begin with, Tui Balms is a grassroots kind of start off with nothing story. There is an intentional community that's been here since 1984, and they were given a recipe of something called bee balm, and were told, hey, you guys might be able to do something with this. The man who gave it to them was an avid beekeeper and a sailor, and he made a recipe using bee balm and olive oil and vitamin E and propolis, which comes from the hive itself. The bees make propolis. It's an antibacterial, and he gifted the recipe to the community, and then they took it from there, and they would just get together once a month and heat up the oil and the beeswax and add the propolis and the vitamin E and hand pour it into glass jars with a handmade label, and then they just went around the country, around New Zealand, offering it as a balm for sale in health food shops and organic places and pharmacies. And from there, it's grown to over 20 products, over 1 million in sales, and we're employing, we've got a big factory here, and we're employing over 15 people part-time. Yeah.
What an incredible story. Can I just ask, like, when that started, you say you gifted to the community. What do you mean by community? Do you just mean a bunch of local people living near each other, or do you have an actual land that you live on? What's that like?
Yeah, so it was back in the 80s when there was a group of people who were, I think as the story goes, they all met on one of those summer festivals where you celebrate together and you have a good dance and you talk about your positive visions for the world. And one of their shared visions that they found was, let's live together and do this not just on a weekend, but on an ongoing basis. And let's take care of land together, and let's raise our children together. And so, yeah, for the first year, they were on some leased land, and then consolidating the group over that time until they bought 100 acres next to the Abel Tasman National Park here in Golden Bay. And that's still the property that the Tui community and Tui Balms is located on now. So yeah, there's a piece of land with about 30 adults and 10 kids and 40 chickens and 10 cows and a few cats and dogs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that community of like 30 adults, is that community then the ones running the factories and stuff that you're talking about, or are they just like the outsiders that come into work? How does that fit together?
Yeah, so in the beginning, what Richard was talking about, it was part of the volunteering time that the residents, they would all pitch in some hours a week to make Tui Balms, and they wouldn't get paid at all. But then as the business grew over time, it got all a bit more formalized, and wages were introduced, and it was a more and it was an optional, employment to take up as being part of living on this land. So by now, most people working with Tui Balms, which is a workers' cooperative now, so it's owned jointly and managed jointly by the workers. Most people live literally across the road, in quite a remote area of New Zealand. So yeah, Tui Balms, we're really happy and proud to provide that local employment rurally here. And Richard himself, he's one of the few exceptions. He used to live across the road, and he's since moved to our nearby township. And he was just such good value that he had to stay on.
It just sounds so unique and really fascinating and kind of idyllic, honestly, when I hear that story. Can I also ask, if someone's hearing this and thinking, this sounds like so cool, I want to come live there, like what's only 30 people? Like what's the deal? Can I apply or something? How does this work?
It is the best person to talk to that, because she is actually the coordinator of, you were the coordinator, weren't you, of new people coming?
Yeah, so you can email me. No, I suggest there's a possibility to have a look on the website. The TUI community has a website. It's called tuitrust.org.nz. There you can find out, you can get some visuals for what we've been talking about, the land and the people, and how to visit and how to get involved. So that's definitely welcome. The community is under the umbrella of an educational trust, and part of the educational sort of content is to be a living example of intentional community. So we're very much about sharing what has been learned in these last 40 years on this land, in terms of guardianship of the land, in terms of how shared decision making, or the interpersonal things. Lots of lessons to be learned across the other side of the road. As much as Tui Balms, is also a model, as a social enterprise that we also love people to learn about. So it's great that we get to talk about it with you.
Yeah, I completely agree. That term social enterprise is something that in the last few years or decade or so, I know has become very popular. There's been a lot of small businesses even sort of embracing that idea of, I'm not a not-for-profit, I make profit, but the profit is used for the greater good. It's not like hoarded by shareholders or by the owner. And I was actually looking at your website for Tui Balms and thinking, gosh, you've been doing this since 1984. This is like quite a really great and long-term example of a business and community model that works really well, or it seems to from the outside anyway. So I might ask the question, like, was there any rough spots? Like, were there any times where you're like, oh, this is just not working, and you had to sort of work through some challenges that way?
I think there's definitely been times, transition times, during the 40 years that TUI has been in business, where there's been challenging moments. We haven't been here that long. I mean, I've been here 12 years, you've been here 15, something like that. But from the stories we've been told, just the idea of moving out of a back room in a house, a little tiny office where there's a few people coming and going, there's a little bit of wages happening, to actually building a purpose-made factory where we actually had to actually design our own manufacturing plant, and things like that. So starting a lot of the time starting from scratch, and really, like, even the design of the building, the design of the production equipment was all done, with ideas from the community members and the co-op members.
Yeah,
So,
I really love that.
Yeah, and there's been a few transitions, and I think each one has come with its own challenges, growing, and expanding.
Yeah.
But also those growth spurts have come from not a desire to get big, but just from internally having to move with the volume of product that we have to make.
Yeah, which is a good point. And I think it's not uncommon for, well, businesses is probably what I'm more familiar with, but also communities in general. The people who often start it have a vision, but over time, it's almost like those people, their vision isn't as big as what might be collected afterwards. And things can just sort of like step forward and forward without maybe being in scope of what some original designer or creator might have thought of. So it's really great to see that journey happening over 40 years. That's a really good time to continue to produce strength in a community and in a business. What would you say from all of that time, or the time you've been there anyway, would be like your biggest, proudest moments or achievements?
I think, well, for me, it's definitely getting feedback, like direct feedback from customers saying, like I've got children, so I've used baby balm on the baby's bottoms, on my kids' baby bottoms, and it really does work so well. But getting people who have had, like, they're at their wits' end and they've used everything at their reach and nothing's worked, and then they've tried baby balm or bee balm and it's cleared up the nappy rash or the cradle cap or the eczema or whatever it is overnight, practically, in some cases literally overnight, where it's really touched people, the product, the quality of it, the ability for it to do its work on the skin, really has touched me so much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think, looking back, at some point, this was before our time, but a decision by the team got made to make Tui Balms a not-for-profit. And I think really in today's times, yeah, where money is an essential part of our lives, that is quite a radical decision. And so over the 15 years that I've been here, to see the pool of annual donations grow each year and the list of charities that are receiving, and to receive the thank you letters, and to hear the tales that, what actions have been empowered with those funds. That's a really big part of my joy in being part of here.
That is so deeply moving. I absolutely love that, and it's something I strongly believe in as well, that we are gifted with success to be able to pass that on to others, right? And when we do, we often receive even more in return. So it's great to be able to see this flowing through your business and your community really, really well. What are some of the biggest charities, or your favorite charities that you've given to over the years, would you say?
We've got one that we're really dedicated to. It's called the Rites of Passage Foundation. So they're working with young people who are transitioning from their teenage years into young adulthood. There's a program for boys and for girls. So yeah, that a lot of us are also sometimes participate in that as adults, as supportive adults in our pastime, and many of our teenage kids have gone through that. And yeah, just really acknowledging that it's a tricky time on this planet to grow up, and that, yeah, the more support and mentorship and eldership we can weave in, that feels really worthwhile.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Look, I want to just return to Tui for a second as well. One of the questions that comes up for me is probably about, if we're talking about challenges, the challenge of maybe working and living with the same people. I run a business with my wife. We've got another business partner as well, Christine. But I do know that when we first started, much smaller, slightly different kind of business, but when we started working together and we live together, it's like, oh my goodness, I just see you all day and night. There's a little bit of like, very different to working out of the home or somewhere different. If the entire community is living in one place and many of the people are working at Tui Balms there, how do you manage that well?
Well, one of the things that's in place which allows sort of space really is when no one works more than 30 hours a week. And I've worked here with my previous wife, and we shared a space a lot together. We were actually we actually shared a role together. And because in a workplace, there's a different set of rules and boundaries. And when you're in that environment, different things, it's just, it's not the same old Groundhog Day, basically. It actually adds something.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's probably
great.
got something about that as well, because you're still doing it.
Yeah, I'm still doing it. Might be quite amusing, but in my experience, it's easier working with people than living with them. Because as we work here together, we really have the clarity of the shared intention. So that's very helpful for it to be satisfying. It's also, yeah, we've learned a lot about communication with one another and over the years, or we keep practicing. So yeah, and kind of having self-awareness and an awareness of each other, of also delineating, where's our private lives and where are we at work now. That's important for the efficiency of the work, because we could talk about I don't know, the chickens or what the kids did yesterday, and not get much work done. So we do delineate, and at the same time, if someone is having a personal challenge, then we just can make the morning tea a bit longer and support each other emotionally, or with a life challenge, and we know each other intimately. So that brings for me, that brings we're kind of like a deep relaxation in the back of my work day, and a trust that I'll be supported if need be.
Yeah, I love that. Just out of curiosity, like when you're not at work, how much do you actually see the other people? Like, is it you mentioned like there's across the road, are you all in separate houses, or do you have like communal eating areas or something? What's it like?
Yeah, so the property is 100 acres, so it's not we're not on top of each other.
So
And
there's
there's
plenty of
about
room to escape if you need a bit of alone time.
we're spread out about across 20 homes, and we do mostly get together once a week regularly for meetings and a shared dinner meal. And then many of us also collaborate with each other on certain sort of projects, like that, we might have a team that looks after the orchard and a team that looks after the roads and the waterways. And so there's like teamwork happening. But in general, people have their different livelihoods. So the amount of community building that actually happens at Tui Balms, where there might be 12 of us who live here, is quite high, that we see each other multiple days a week.
Yeah, that's great. So there's quite a strong connection at Tui Balms to the actual community itself. Because if you've got around 30 adults, did you say 15 workers at Tui Balms? So I'm assuming maybe half the people at the community are working at Balms. Is that right?
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty great. And how many kids are there? If there's that many adults, like, is there a lot of kids running around?
There's about 10 children, some of which live here part-time because one of their parents might have moved to town, or yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
the
love
range
that.
ranges from our junior is 18, so he's one of the oldest. Our junior at least for 18, and then down to
Maybe 5 or 6 is the youngest. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really great. It's just so interesting as you share this stuff, different visions are popping into my head, because obviously I've watched a video on your website. It looks really beautiful. The area looks absolutely amazing, and it's a well-shot video too. So it looks really, really good. But I've got very little idea other than that of what it actually looks like. So it's just interesting to me to hear you share what that experience of living there is like. So thank you. That's great. If we come back to the actual Tui Balms side of things, I guess I met you guys, or especially at conference here in Australia, the Massage and Myotherapy conference. So obviously, having been in the industry for 40 years, you're very well known within Australia and New Zealand. What are you in other countries yet? Like, what's the vision of the business side of things?
In terms of a vision, we actually don't want to get that big. We actually thought, oh, if we got to, this amount of sales, then we really wouldn't want to go any more than that. And that's we kind of like the family feel of the business, the small family feel, part-time. You know, there's no real heavy hierarchy. We're you know, on a lot of the time we're on the same level in terms of decision making and how we work together. This is our vision. Just keep that family feel going.
Yeah. One of the things that strikes me too is the authenticity you guys have around the branding of the actual product, the Tui Balm, and the business that's behind it and the community there. And I know, you know, the trends in design and what people will buy change over time. And the kind of natural feel things often does resonate quite well with the massage community and people within that kind of sphere. But a lot of the times it's still big pharmaceutical companies that are just like putting a natural looking label on a product to fit in with the design style that they feel like, you know, massage therapists or other people might want to buy. And yet hearing your story, I'm like, you guys are the OG. You guys are actually making this happen. And it's like Tui Balms is a representation of something you're actually living and breathing and doing every day. And I think that level of alignment is really special and really powerful in this industry. Maybe you could share, because you've been through a new design recently, a brand design. What has that process been like for you? What prompted you to design a new brand and how did that come about?
Yeah. Thanks, first of all, James, for acknowledging that what you said about the authenticity, because it's sort of, you know, when I hear you say it, it does feel like an acknowledgement, and I go internally, yeah, it's actually true. And even like how Richard said, you know, like if we have children, we use our products. If I do a massage with my partner, I use our products. It's, you know, we live and breathe balms, really. So, you know, it's very easy to come to conference with them or to talk about them. Yeah, there isn't a big gap between us as people and the brand. Yeah, and it's right what you said about, you know, that our lifestyle here is very much, you know, looking at wellness, you know, like how are we well as humans, as a family on the earth, and the business is how do we create a livelihood in a good way. And then if we go like, oh, this has to do with massage, with skin, we want it to be nourishing, so it's got to be natural. It relates again back to the farming practices and our considerations of, you know, where do the products come from, and those things. And one thing that comes with manufacturing products is, of course, the packaging. So in as Richard mentioned in the beginning, it was glass jars that were hand filled, and you know, when the business became above a certain scale and parcels started to be sent out, they were very heavy and they could break, and so a switch to plastic pots took place, which were, you know, everyone loved the functionality and the convenience of plastic pots, and they're sturdy and light, and they had a lot of benefits. So for a long time, I don't know exactly how long, you know, 20, 25 years, the pots came, the balms came in these pots. And yeah, probably since we've been here, the conversation always keeps going as like, yeah, you know, there's a big plastic crisis on this planet. And even though recycling is possible, not nearly, you know, a large enough percentage does get recycled. And so we've been looking for alternatives for a long time. And you can have a look on our website. There's a whole long story of which rabbit holes we went down and roundabouts, and learning that there isn't, in the current place, we could not find the ideal packaging solution for the products. So wherever we looked, there was a compromise to be made, and so that was a big learning. To sort of navigate that, and then within our co-op team go like, well, we still want to make a choice. We want to reduce plastic. That was the intention. So come across a pot that is made from recycled cardboard felt really good, especially for us living rurally. It's fantastic. Like it makes a good fire starter. Once it's empty, you can use it to pot your little seedlings before you plant them out. Yeah, you can compost it. Yeah, we really like those. So
I love that. And again, it aligns so well with that vision and the values that you have as a community, which is great. What about the graphic design that goes along with that? Like I'm interested, my background is graphic design and marketing. So I'm always kind of interested in how people choose those things, or the different designs that you might choose to make, design choices. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, so the Tui bird, which I've recently rediscovered that it pays actually pointing out what is this Tui about, because you over there in Australia, you don't have Tui birds.
No,
And so
that's
people
right.
ask, well, what is this bird about and what is this Tui about? So I'm happy to share that this bird is called a Tui. It's a bird native to New Zealand, and it's very abundant where we live here. It's a songbird that drinks nectar, and yeah, it's quite colorful. And so probably in the very beginning, I don't actually know how it came about. It's almost a bit of a mascot. I imagine that it got chosen because really you could say, well, what does a bird have to do with massage? But the bird had everything to do with the location where the idea came from. So that has been retained. Yeah, that image got retained, and the branch that it sits on is the flower of a flex bush, which it loves to drink the nectar of. And yeah, the design, we're fortunate to have a very talented artist part of the co-op. So she, Erilyn, is often directing our artwork evolution, and then I got to upskill in sort of Illustrator and design program skills, and yeah, that's sort of where we took it from, sort of simplifying the color scheme, softening it. Yeah, simplicity, I think, is a word that comes through. It's kind of something that's relaxing and pleasing to the eye. Yeah.
And from a branding point of view, I'm always thinking too about how the people who are receiving that, especially for products, are going to be displaying it and using it in their own space. And something that just looks natural and beautiful. It's quite a soft looking, beautiful brand. For some people, having that product in their space is actually just going to make the clients feel like this is a nice space. This is really great. It aligns with their values as a business. A massage therapy business might have a value of being natural, being down to earth, being grassroots, as you mentioned. And so using products that look and feel from that same value system just align really beautifully. So I think it's a really spot on choice, and I love it. It looks like a really great brand and a really great product that comes in the brand as well, of course. So yeah, kudos to you guys. You've done a fantastic job, not just of the community and the product and a rebrand, but just everything you're sharing aligns so beautifully. I'm really inspired by that. What would you say is the next step? Like you mentioned, from a business point of view, it's not to take over the world or be so big, but what vision do you have for the next, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, as far as the community and the business go?
I think for the business, really it's about keeping the quality and the quality of the product, the feel of the product, keeping it aligned with our true values and what customers are aligned with, and also the ingredients too, because we're facing like it's harder and harder to get quality ingredients at a good price. So everything's going up, and so really, yeah, for us, or from my perspective, keeping the quality and keeping the feel of the balm, true. And just because it's actually quite hard work to keep it going in that sense, because so many things are changing.
And that's probably another reason, like as you start to grow, if you did want to take over the world, you've got to source even more of that product, right? So that's another reason to keep it a little bit succinct, is that you can maybe use the products you can source to be able to provide something that's really great to people. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I do feel, when you said about taking over the world, I think I want to mention our sort of friend. We do have a franchise company. So maybe 15, 20 years back, there was an Englishman who was very fond of our balms, and he wanted to make them available in the UK. And so he started placing orders and on selling there. And over time, that became so regular and in such volumes that, we started to have an agreement where they've started their own company called Songbird Naturals. And so the Tui Balms recipes are actually also produced in the UK for the European market. So just in case our listeners would ever move to Europe, you don't have to despair. You can still get your Tui massage balms over there.
How fantastic. That's great.
Could say we've already taken over the world.
Yeah, well, you're at least halfway there. That's right.
And he's doing so well too. He's doing really, really well.
And is it a community like you guys, or is he just doing a business thing?
He's a normal, he owns the business and he employs local people.
But another thing that I'm really interested in is if you've got this kind of community that's coming together to run the business, what does it actually look like for each person to be involved in terms of, in a standard business, we might have a boss who employs people and chooses them based on their skills and wants to sort of fill gaps in a business model that they've got in mind. How does that actually work if you've got the people already like working cooperatively and might have different skills and that kind of stuff to bring to the table? How's it organized? How does that work?
Yeah, interesting that from my perspective, I think what happens is when you set a space where the space is it's a workers' co-op and it is a non-for-profit. So it's a donation-based business, but we're making a profit. There's a kind of a magic that happens with the creativity. And a lot of the things that have happened at Tui Balms have come from just pure inspiration, just a place of pure creativity. We didn't actually set out with our minds to make something happen. It was through the feeling that we've created in the business, and through the model, it's allowed a lot of the creativity to come through. It's very relaxed. There's no harsh hierarchical system. So, yeah, I think that's gone a long way to bringing us to where we are now.
And on a practical level, that you might have been pointing at too. Yes, there's a whole variety of tasks that need to get done, and some are more popular than others. But for one, we have a really diverse group of people with different skills. So yeah, we get to really harvest these different skills. Someone might be more mechanically minded, someone is more, meticulous in the admin realm, other people are creative. So we're harvesting that. And then also the whole culture of the place nourishes like that goodwill that someone is always willing to be the cleaner. And so the GM might be share the role of the cleaner at the same stint. And we do have capacity to rotate around and to put in every year if we have other ambitions and would like to grow into different roles. So there's also a possibility, definitely, with being here longer term, to mature more deeply into the business or take up more managerial tasks.
How fantastic. You guys are the coolest guests I've ever had on this program. Thank you. You've given me some real inspiration around that sort of natural living. The community side of stuff is just super inspirational, and it's great to see people actually doing it. I think, especially in this industry, it seems like there would be people who have that as a kind of a vision or a dream that they might have thought about at some point, but maybe the quote unquote realities of life, are kind of stopping them from being able to do some of that really cool community driven stuff. And yet here's you guys 40 years on running this amazing community, a fantastic business, aligned so well with the vision and the values that you've got in a massage space that just all aligns beautifully. So absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing today. Really appreciate your time, and all the best for the community and the balms as you continue.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jane. Nice to talk to you.